Welcome to WizeUp. I'm Paul Arthur. Artificial intelligence is everywhere. It's invaded our society. Of course, some folks love it. Other people despise it, right? It seems to be one or the other. Many believe that AI should have very strict government oversight, some regulations in place, concerns about public safety and so forth. But, would this possibly threaten our privacy, our autonomy, our free speech, right? These are all issues we need to look at. So before we jump in, a quick reminder to hit subscribe. And our guest today joining us from Calgary, John Carpay. Many of you would know him as the president of JCCF, the Justice Center for Constitutional Freedoms. Their website, jccf.ca. And John, for anybody who doesn't know the first thing about JCCF, give us a quick rundown of what you folks do.
So the Justice Center is a registered charity that defends freedom in Canada. We are funded entirely by voluntary contributions, not by government. And we have a team of lawyers across Canada that takes on dozens and dozens of cases every year in defense of our freedoms of expression, association, religion, conscience, peaceful assembly, travel, mobility, also the right to privacy and the right to be free from state surveillance are important parts of our work.
Yeah, we've done interviews with you, John, for, probably a couple of decades here. And I'm looking at the number of cases you guys are handling now. And there's other, similar organizations to yours that there weren't before. And it's just like, it's just gone astronomically upward, the number of cases we're dealing with here that, infringe on the rights of Canadians. So this is important stuff for sure. Now, you've got a new report coming out at JCCF. I think it was just released today at the time of this taping anyway. There it is. Okay, yes, the danger of government-controlled artificial intelligence. And now ever since, of course, the Tumbler Ridge shooting, and your report touches on that as well, the mass shooting there, tragic. There's lots of concerns about AI because, of course, the shooter did have an open AI account. He was flagged, but they never actually contacted the police. So, out of that, I guess, I think there are a lot of people who say, hey, that there is a place for a legitimate, place for government to get involved and put some regulations in place to keep us safe. Your thoughts on that?
Well, three things. Firstly, there is an 8-month time gap between when this shooter was going on AI to do queries, searches, questions about mass shootings. It was 8 months later that he shot people. So that was quite a big time gap. Secondly, it was the police, not artificial intelligence, that returned guns to him that they had taken away from him in 2024. And now about 1 month before the shooting, the police brought the guns back to the shooter.
Wow, that's a real issue right there, right? I mean, that's not artificial intelligence, as you point out. These are human beings that made a decision that turned out to be a very, very bad decision that cost a lot of people's lives. So maybe that's more of an issue then, because he was already flagged then, wasn't he?
Well, he was, yeah. Police took his firearms away in 2024. And then in January 2026, they returned the firearms to the shooter. So I don't know if the police are named as defendants in this lawsuit. I know that there are families in Tumbler Ridge who are suing OpenAI over its decision not to call in law enforcement when this mentally ill person was doing an AI search on mass shootings. The third point, which is, I think, the most important, is that the public discourse is, at least on the government-funded media, on the CTV, CBC, Global, and so on, they're not talking about the cultural issues, societal issues about mental illness, about loneliness, about people not being rooted in community, about how lockdowns damaged the mental health of children and adults, and a decline in respect for human life. These are cultural factors. 100 years ago, 75 years ago, 50 years ago, the firearms ownership rates were higher than what they are today. and we did not have mass shootings. So this is a cultural, moral, societal problem. And it's so disappointing to see some people who are just fixated on, well, let's have government surveillance of artificial intelligence. So whenever anybody is doing a query and using AI, that will be under government surveillance. So that way we can somehow magically catch shooters before they go out and kill people. It's really missing the mark. It's missing the boat. We did not have mass shootings 50 years ago when there were more firearms in the hands of people.
Yeah. So again, maybe we're targeting the wrong thing here. It's not that we, shouldn't have some regulations around the internet and so forth and AI, but the far greater problem is a moral issue, isn't it? Guns don't kill people. It's the people holding the guns, right, who make that decision. And again, where's their mental health at? Where's their spiritual health at? It's a whole nother program. But yeah, you bring up some very interesting questions we need to ponder here. Now, there are calls for artificial intelligence to be nationalized, and depending where you are on the political spectrum, some people would really like that idea. Strict government controls, and it looks like possibly the federal government is actually considering something like that.
Well, indirectly, there's a Bill C-22, which is called the Lawful Access Act, and it makes it easier for the government to get access to subscriber data and easier to access information generally from private companies. Now, Bill C-22 was not introduced as a response to the Tumbler Ridge shooting, but there is some overlap because so the C-22 would make it easier for police to get a warrant to access private subscriber data from large companies like TELUS and Bell and Rogers and so on. It would also empower the federal government to order private companies to restructure and reprogram their software to make it easier for government to come in and access information. And it would also force the companies to keep subscriber data as to when people were phoning, texting, emailing, to keep that data on file for a full year. So it's basically a building block of the surveillance state where we are moving towards a place like the George Orwell's novel 1984, where Big Brother is watching you, Big Brother is listening to you. This bill before Parliament C-22 is a step in that direction. And the Justice Centre is encouraging people to sign a petition that we have on our website to stop Bill C-22. We don't want the surveillance state. It is a cure that is worse than the disease.
Yeah, the idea of big government always just, again, ever since the freedom, truckers' convoys and so forth, it should have gotten our attention that governments can't always be trusted with these kinds of things, freezing bank accounts and so forth. Let me ask you a question. If we did have, strict federal government oversight of AI, or, if it was nationalized or whatever, would it actually, how effective would it have been? Could it have stopped the Tumbler Ridge shooting?
It's not clear. It's purely speculative.
Okay.
The broader issues. This young man was very mentally ill, had serious mental health problems. There was family breakdown. It was a fatherless home. He shot his mother, one of his siblings, 6 people, shot himself. Yeah. And to not look at the underlying social, moral, cultural, spiritual issues and to say, well, the government should have been notified that he did this search on the internet. Well, even then, that was 8 months prior to the shooting. What if the government had knocked on his door and said, hey, how's it going? What are you doing? What are you up to? Obviously, 8 months later, nobody, neither the government nor the community nor citizens had been able to reach through to this very hurting, very sick person in a meaningful way. So to suggest that, if we had just had government surveillance over AI, somehow the shooting could have been prevented. And then there's the big factor of police returning firearms to the shooter a month before he goes out and kills people. Maybe it's the police policies that need to be reviewed. Maybe it's the police who should be sued here. So the cost is, there's no guarantee that the widespread surveillance is going to reduce crime. But even if it did, at what price? That we become a totalitarian society like communist China, where you have centralized digital ID, where when you criticize the government, you cannot get onto a bus or a train or an airplane because you got centralized digital ID and the government's got all the information on you. That is a totalitarian hell where the government just turns into a big criminal itself. I think that's far worse than having the risk of, a certain amount of tragic, violent crime.
Yeah, I mean, I think we look at that, the Chinese social credit system that they have, and it's very real. People are put on blacklists, and there's, if you're on the blacklist, there's some things you can't do anymore. You may not be able to get a plane ticket out of the country, these kinds of things, right? Limits on where you can, or how you can conduct your business and so forth. Could that happen in Canada? And we kind of, not likely, right? We're Canadian. We're not, communist Chinese. But when you see...
It wasn't that long ago that we all had to show a QR code to show a total stranger personal private medical information to the barista at Starbucks or the admissions clerk at a movie theater. We had to show personal private information on a QR code just to be able to function as a citizen in the country. That was 4.5 years ago. So that technology exists in Canada, and if the government was going to use that to pressure people to get injected with a substance that was neither safe nor effective, if that's the kind of pressure government would apply to get you to get injected, why would we think that government would not abuse the massive information it acquired about every citizen through a surveillance state?
Yeah, you ask some very good questions that we need to ponder as citizens of Canada. Trust the government, right? I'm not so quick to do that these days. You mentioned earlier Bill C-22, which I guess isn't law just yet, but very likely that it will be, considering that Mark Carney does have a majority government at this point. And so this bill says they'll hold on to all that metadata for a full year, right? So 1 year goes by and it magically disappears, right? What accountability is there to actually ensure that information is erased and it's not on somebody's hard drive somewhere within the government circles?
Look, a government that can do everything for you is a government that can take everything from you. And a government that knows everything about you is a government that can inflict a great deal of harm on you. If you think about this on a private citizen's level, right? Let's say that you wanted to hurt somebody named Mark Smith. My apology to any Mark Smiths out there. So you want to cause him harm. If you don't know anything about Mark Smith, it's next to impossible to harm him. But the more information you have, where does he live? Where does he go to work? Is he married? Does he have kids? Where do his kids go to school? What are his political opinions? How does he spend his spare time? What are his financial situations? Is he financially comfortable? Is he poor? Is he in debt? If you have a ton of information about Mark Smith, then you're in a position to harm him. Okay. If you don't know anything about Mark Smith, if you don't know where he lives, where he works, it's very hard for you to harm him. So with governments, it's the same thing. If government has a file on Paul or on John, and everything is. The government has files on us right now, but they're separate, and that's okay. Like, so the doctor will have some files on you. The police might know how many speeding tickets you've gotten or whether or not you've got a criminal record. Your educational institutions where you've studied have some information about you, but it's all scattered. But imagine if it was all centralized and the government knew not only where you live and where you go to work, but if this was all in one place, so the government could find out where you live, where you work, who you get your money from, how you spend your money, what your political opinions are. If government has all that information on you, that makes you extremely vulnerable. Now, government is necessary. Government can do a lot of good things, but government, roads and bridges and funding and managing an independent court system that is impartial. You got police, you got fire department, and so on. Snow removal, roads and bridges, national defense. Okay, fine. However, governments in the 20th century, there were more people who were murdered by their own government than the number of soldiers who died on the battlefields. So governments, when you think about Mao Zedong in China, Stalin in Russia, Hitler in Germany, Pol Pot in Cambodia, etc., there are more people murdered by their own governments in the 20th century than the number of soldiers who died on the battlefield. So we have to place healthy limits on government, and we have to say yes to government to do certain tasks that only government can carry out. Mm-hmm. And then we have to say no to government surveillance.
Yeah, well put. All things we should put into the think tank here as we're pondering, should AI be government controlled? And if so, to what extent, right? Because it's so tempting, I think, for any government, be it, conservative, NDP, or liberal, if they get their hands on all that information, do you think it would potentially lead to political bias, ideological bias in, keeping track of, who's criticizing government policies now? Could we use this information to target that person somehow? Now, that would never happen in Canada, right? Ask the people again with the frozen bank accounts.
Yeah.
Right? I mean, it's. I think it's inevitable, frankly, probably almost with any flavor of government, and so that's where, in a democracy, it's us, the hoi polloi. We're the ones who vote them in or vote them out. We should have a say in this, and we should keep them accountable. So it's a big thing. It really is. I mean, any idea, by the way? Would this bill, just practically speaking, outside of the freedom issues we're talking about here and the privacy issues, would it potentially create a permanent weakness for foreign interference, for example, right? Criminal hackers or foreign governments, coming in the back door with all this information to access it, because they're hanging on to this information for a year, right? And, not that our, Canadian system could ever get hacked by somebody. Right.
We've seen incidents of this. I think that it's if private and confidential information about individuals is stored in hundreds or even thousands of different places, then the hacking is going to be minimized. The moment you put it all together in one data place, in one spot, so to speak, yep. Well, now you've got a problem. And if there is hacking, it would be catastrophic because the hacker would get in there and have access to all the information, all kinds of information about every single person if it's in one place. Yeah. So this too is it's better to have that decentralized. Yeah,
I would agree. Any idea, I'm not sure if there's surveys done on this here recently, but where's the Canadian public at on Bill C-22? I'm not even sure how well informed the public is on this particular bill, but, are they saying, yes, protect us, please, big government, or are they voicing concerns about it?
Well, the Bill C-22 is currently in committee in the House of Commons. So there's a committee of MPs, which will have some Liberals, Conservatives, Bloc, possibly a New Democrat or not on the committee looking at the bill. And so the Justice Centre in the days ahead will be submitting a brief to recommend changes. And we may or may not be called to testify before the committee, but hopefully they will take the worst parts out. And we have seen changes to other legislation where when MPs of all parties sit down and look at it, and there's some back and forth debate, and the Liberal MPs are persuaded to change the legislation at the suggestion of the Conservatives, or vice versa if the Conservative government is in power. But people do need to contact their member of Parliament about Bill C-22 and express concerns to that effect. We have a petition on our website that's quite easy to use.
Okay, so jccf.ca, you can sign the petition there, as well as contact your member of Parliament. Now, your report also touches on the likelihood of overregulation leading to AI users falling into self-censorship. Okay, I guess out of fear of, government eyes looking over their shoulder, right? So, people on the internet these days, they voice a lot of strong opinions this way or that way. But that might have a damper put on it with this, right? And is there going to be a tendency to not engage if they're, self-censorship, I guess, yeah.
Well, privacy is essential for freedom. If we don't have privacy, we're not truly free to speak and think and interact. And it's very sad because we improve our own thinking when we have a conversation. So if you're, meet up with a buddy over a coffee or over a beer or at the pub, and you're having a conversation back and forth about a topic, as you speak and as you hear yourself speak and as you formulate your thoughts and express yourself, your thinking actually becomes better and sharper. Your understanding becomes better. You have better ideas through that process of conversation. And everybody knows that feeling of, sometimes you got an issue you're just grappling with, and your mind's going round and round in circles. You're not coming up with a solution. So you meet up with somebody, you talk, they listen. And you talk and talk and talk and talk and talk and talk, and they listen. And after a while, you get this great mental clarity. So freedom of expression works like that. That's one of the benefits of freedom of expression. If I feel free to be honest and talk, and you listen, then I can improve my thinking and get more clarity, get better insights into things. And so government surveillance just hamstrings that. If you know that there's a listening device or a camera, you're not going to have that free flow of conversation. You're going to be very cautious and guarded about everything that you say. So we lose all the benefits. And it's the same thing. If government can have surveillance over our use of artificial intelligence, people are not going to be using it freely to explore and to challenge their thinking.
Certainly going to cut back on that, I would think. Again, that whole idea that somebody's looking over your shoulder, and they likely are, if this goes through, right? So, and again, very likely that there will be regulations put in place by our federal government. Any thoughts, I guess, on what kind of limits or regulations would be reasonable, I guess, for public safety?
Well, we've got lots of laws on the books right now. I mean, this ties in with legislation that was introduced 2 years ago that died with the election last year that might be brought back, which is the Online Harms Act.
Oh, boy.
And the Online Harms Act tries to say that we should accept surveillance and give up our rights and freedoms, give up privacy, et cetera, in order to protect children from online harms. What is insidious about that message is that it's already illegal to harm children online. by uttering threats,
Right.
by bullying, by taking illicit photographs, by threatening to release photographs, revenge porn, child pornography, terrorism, anything that's criminal on the street or at the shopping mall is also criminal online. We've got all of these laws already. So what if we're failing in law enforcement, if we're not doing a good job on that front, then the solution is to have better law enforcement, not to pass a whole bunch of laws that advance the surveillance state.
Right, not more regulations, just enforce the ones that we already have in place. Now, that's an interesting concept. Could do probably a whole show on that. Boy. Okay. So, I mean, what can people do, I guess? I mean, we touched base on it earlier. We have some limits in what we can do, but we can make our voices heard to our MPs or MLAs. And again,
contact your member of parliament.
Yeah.
Urge him or her to vote against Bill C-22, or you sign the petition on our website, or both. And that's a very practical thing that people can do immediately and should do, regardless of whether your MP is a Liberal, Conservative, NDP, Bloc Green, whatever. This is the time for people to contact their member of parliament.
Yeah, I guess on the one hand, we kind of think, well, are they even going to listen? You know, what can I do? But you got to do something. So make your voice heard and just keep at it, and we'll see what we can do. Certainly pray for the situation as well. Freedom, we all long for it. I think God's put that in our heart. So appreciate what you guys do at the Justice Center for Constitutional Freedom. So jccf.ca. Thank you so much, John.
Thanks for having me on your show.
You bet. Always good to have you on with us. All right. Appreciate your feedback here as well. Let me know, Paul at WizeUp.ca. And don't forget to hit subscribe, and you can see our episodes at WizeUp.ca.